Hey everyone, and welcome to a brand new video. Tonight we have 2 hours of horror stories. I hope you all enjoy them. If you do, please be sure to drop a like rating. Let's see if we can reach 1,000 likes. It only takes just a quick second to drop a like, and it helps out the channel so much. Subscribing if you are new is also very much appreciated, as I do post content just like this all of the time. I did want to apologize for the break in uploads between the one previous to this one and this one. I just had a lot going on. Nothing bad. It was just the holidays and then New Year's. And then I had one of my childhood best friends fly out and visit me for a week, and we were just having a ton of fun. And I kind of wanted to put making videos on the back burner and just really appreciate my time with him. So everything is good, everything is fine. I should be back in the workflow, and we have an awesome lineup of stories for you all today. Anyways, sit back, do whatever it is that you do to relax, enjoy the 2 hours of uninterrupted horror stories right after the ad break after this intro. There won't be any more ad breaks after that one. And as always, I hope you all have a great night. I was on my 3rd beer in a local bar. She must have noticed me before I noticed her, because when my eyes fell on her, she was already looking my way. There was passion in her eyes. She wore a short black dress, and her crimson hair complemented her emerald-colored eyes. A tattoo of a snake stretched across her arm. As soon as we made eye contact, I looked away. I've always been a nervous guy, and I don't want to make things awkward by staring at her. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her keeping a constant gaze on me. I pretended to be busy on my phone when the bartender put a beer in front of me. "I didn't order this," I told him. Carl was the regular bartender and gave me a little wink. "It's from the girl sitting at the bar." He walked away, and I looked at her dumbfounded, but gave a small nod to say thanks. She took this as an invitation and walked over to me. "So you finally stopped avoiding my eye contact, huh?" She took the seat right next to me and gave a playful smile. My nerves were acting up, and I felt sweat running down my back. This girl was beautiful, and she was talking to me. I decided to play it cool. "Trying to catch my eye, were you?" She looked at me as if she were expecting something more. "Can I get you a drink?" I offered. "Something strong." I called over Carl and ordered her a vodka. She didn't complain. "What's your name?" I asked. "It's Madeline." "Well, Madeline, my name is Jack. So what made you sit down next to me?" "You have inviting eyes, and I was bored," she replied. "If it wasn't for that second part of your sentence, I'd be flattered as hell." She laughed. Interesting choice of words. I didn't get the joke, but laughed anyway. "Do you live close by?" she asked. I noticed that every few minutes, she'd scooch her chair closer to mine. "Yeah, it's a 10-minute drive from here to my place." "Interesting." She took a sip of her vodka. "Want to play a game of truth or dare?" "Sure," I said, trying not to break eye contact. "You go first." "How about we make it more interesting? If you win, you get to take me home tonight and do whatever you want. If I win, I get to take you home. So what will it be? Truth or dare?" This sounded like a win-win in my opinion. My luck with girls had never been amazing. I'd been on a dry spell for over a year now, and here was my chance to take this lady home. I couldn't mess this up. "Dare." "My kind of guy," she said, giving me that flirtatious smile again. "Let's see. What to make you do? Oh, I know. You have to steal something from this bar." I looked around trying to find an easy steal. "Okay, be right back," I told her and went to the bathroom. When I came back 2 minutes later, I showed her the roll of toilet paper I'd stolen. She laughed. Well, not exactly the great heist I was expecting, but I guess it'll do. I was starting to get tipsy. "Your turn. Truth or dare?" There was a malicious glance in her eyes. "Dare me." "Get a stranger to buy you a drink in this bar." She rolled her eyes. "At least make it a challenge." She got up, pulled up her skirt slightly, and gave me a wink. Not 3 minutes later, she set down a vodka and a beer on the table. Got you something as well. Now tell me, boy, truth or dare? Okay, give me a truth, I replied. When's the last time you screwed someone? This caught me by surprise. I hesitated, wondering if I should tell her the truth or make up a wild sex story. I'm gonna be honest here. I wasn't exactly on my game this past year. She looked at me with surprise. Oh, well then. You just have to make sure that you win tonight. To be fair, I thought I was rocking this interaction, and I just thought of a dare she couldn't possibly go through with. This was going to be my victory move. Truth or dare? Dare. I took a deep breath. Okay, Madeline, take off an article of clothing. I knew she wouldn't be able to do this because she was only wearing that short black dress. She smiled. The gloves are coming off, huh? Finally. Let's play then. As she spoke, she reached under her skirt and pulled out her underwear. With a few easy movements of her legs, it was completely removed. I tried to look cool and casual, but I'm afraid I was just gaping at her. She laughed and, without saying anything, moved closer and slipped her underwear into my pocket. Truth or dare? I knew if I'd said dare, she'd pick something insane. I decided to play it safe. Truth, I blurted out. The beers were getting to my head. She looked at me. Her eyes went cold, all expression draining from her face. Do you still think about your brother a lot? My stomach turned. I went from almost drunk to stone cold sober in a second. What? What did you just say? I asked, do you still think about your brother? My heart sank. Who are you? Sweat ran down my back again, but this time it wasn't nerves. It was fear. It doesn't work that way. You have to answer, or you lose. For the first time that night, I felt genuinely scared. I thought about getting up and walking out, but something in my gut told me I needed answers. Every day, I said, trying to hide the sadness in my voice. She looked surprised, then laughed. Oh my, you really are someone special. I was sure you would have walked out after that one. I glanced around the bar. It was almost empty. The local drunk slumped in the corner. Carl chatting with a blonde. 2 guys murmuring at the far end. Well, don't you have anything to ask me? She said, clearly enjoying herself. Who are you? She frowned. No, that's not how this works. Second time. You get one more chance. Her eyes flashed red for a split second. Summoning all my courage, I asked, truth or dare? That's more like it. Truth. Who are you? I have been known by many names on many different planes. One of the names your people gave me was Apollyon. Others called me Abaddon, though the legends far outweigh my actions. This body isn't even mine. It belongs to someone who performed a ritual with her friends. Looking for cheap thrills, now she gets the privilege of being mine until I'm sick of her. She smiled sweetly, as if unaware of the weight of her words. I shook my head. This has to be some kind of sick joke. Truth or dare, Jack? She asked me. I chose truth. Do you believe what I'm telling you? No, this is too much to believe. Her only response was a faint smile. I felt trapped. Walking away crossed my mind, but fear kept me seated. She couldn't have known about my brother. He'd died over 7 years ago, before we moved states. Still, I kept playing. Truth or dare? Dare. Go away and leave me alone. She laughed. That's not how this works. Leaving is a forfeit, but I'll be kind and give you one more chance. We can't dare each other to go away, or to kill ourselves. Now give me a dare. Fine. Prove to me you are who you say you are. She smiled. That I can do. She grabbed my hand, and images flew through my mind. I immediately knew she wasn't human. God, the things she made me see. I stood in an unfamiliar landscape with black fire burning everywhere. There were things walking around that couldn't have been real. Giant monstrosities with 2 snake-like heads and 6 legs. Almost humanoid creatures that must have been 4 meters long, with bat-like wings on their backs. It was painful to my eyes and sanity just to look at them. An eclipse loomed high in the sky. In the far distance stood enormous mountains. At least, that's what I thought, until those damned mountains started moving. At the center of it all was a pit. Thousands upon thousands of humans and other creatures lay inside it. I was shocked to see they were still alive. The sound of their screams and muffled moans were horrible, but the most awful thing of all, when I looked at those poor damned souls in that wretched pit, I saw his eyes. He was buried beneath others, and even after 7 years, I would never forget the eyes of my own brother. Jonathan was in that pit. I don't know what came over me, but suddenly my fear of that hell-like world faded away, and I ran toward the pit. I saw his eyes widen in response. I was getting him out. I blinked once, and when I opened my eyes, I was back in the bar. Madeline was next to me. That same smile plastered on her face. "Don't make a scene, or this won't end well for the people here," she told me. My brother was stuck in hell, and this girl didn't want me to make a scene? "Get him out of there," I said, trying to sound confident and intimidating. Tears rolled down my cheeks. "Poor baby," she replied. "I know it can't be easy facing this reality." She wiped a tear from my face, and I sat there in utter shock. "God, I love that taste," she murmured, licking the tear from her finger. "I'm afraid I can't get him out. The stakes of this game have already been set." I tried to stay calm and think rationally, but that was easier said than done. The only thought going through my mind was finding something sharp and stabbing her in the face. That wouldn't help, though. I had to save my brother. "You told me if I won, I could tell you to do whatever I wanted." She chuckled. "You sweet child. The deal was that you could do whatever you wanted to me, and I really mean that. You can torture me, or take me and work out every messed up fantasy you've ever had. Hell, you can do both at the same time. Sounds like a fun night, but you can't tell me what to do." The way she said it almost sounded like sympathy. "Please," I said, no longer holding back my tears. "Get him out." "Truth or dare, Jack?" I chose dare. "Make yourself bleed." "Wait, hold on. You said we couldn't ask each other to harm ourselves." She laughed. "I said we couldn't tell each other to kill ourselves. I just want to see a little blood." I pulled out my pocket knife and held my hand under the table as I made a small cut in my finger. It hurt real bad. As soon as the blood welled up, she took my finger and licked it clean. "Do you like that?" she asked, licking the last of the blood from her lips. I didn't. "Can we just ditch the small talk and play the game?" I asked. That only seemed to excite her more as she leaned forward, eagerly waiting for the question we both knew was coming. "Truth or dare?" "Truth." "How can I get my brother out of there?" I asked, wiping away the last of my tears. She tilted her head, studying me like a sick puppy. It disgusted me. "You can't, Jack," she said. "Your brother played a game, and he lost. It's that simple. Even if you manage to return, there's not a goddamn thing you could do." Those words devastated me. I had 1,000 more questions about Jonathan and that wretched world, but this horrible game wouldn't allow them. "Truth or dare, Jack?" I picked truth. There was no way I was choosing dare again. "Would you take his place? If I gave you the option right now, Would you go to the pit to free him? A soul for a soul. It's not a bad deal, right? The question caught me completely off guard. Everyone likes to believe they'd be the hero, the martyr who wouldn't hesitate to save someone they love. I thought about my parents, my friends, my colleagues, even my online gaming buddies. Tears welled in my eyes again as I realized what I had to do. Even if it meant being trapped in that world forever, I had to try. For Jonathan. I looked at her with disgust. Okay, take me there. I'll take his place. She burst into manic laughter. Oh, my dear Johnny boy. I just wanted to know if you would. The truth is, even if I wanted to, I can't get your brother out. He's property of that world now, and its inhabitants. Never in my life had I wanted to hurt someone so badly. I knew I couldn't lose this game. I couldn't bear the thought of my parents losing another child. It would destroy them. Then something clicked. It wasn't a good plan, and I didn't even know if it would work, but it was my only chance. Truth or dare, Madeline? As expected, she chose dare. I dare you to leave the body you're possessing right now. Her eye twitched, and her smile finally vanished. Well, well, clever boy, she said. If I'm not here, I can't play the game anymore. Of course you'll miss out on your prize. Or who knows? This girl might still be into you. Let's do this again sometime. She laughed. None of this meant a damn thing to her. She was just having fun, and that infuriated me most of all. Please, I said, exhausted. Just leave me alone. In an instant, her eyes changed. Confusion flickered across her face before she collapsed. It took me a moment to call out to Carl for help. The past half hour had felt like it was just the two of us in the world. I told him I thought she'd had too much to drink. He called an ambulance and told me to go home. On the way back, I replayed everything, tears streaming down my face. When I got home, I had a drink, then another, and another. I woke to birds chirping as sunlight spilled through the window. My head felt like it might explode. Relief washed over me. It had all been a dream, until I noticed I was still wearing yesterday's clothes. I reached into my pocket for my phone, and my body went cold when my fingers brushed against a piece of underwear. I still have the playlist we made on my phone. It is mostly trash 2000s pop and some indie bands she found on TikTok. We used to drive around for hours in my beat-up Honda just listening to it. That was our thing. We would go to the drive-thru at Wendy's, get 2 Frosties, and just drive until the gas light came on. Katie was cool. She was not just my sister. She was the only person in the house who actually got it. Our parents were fine, I guess. They loved us, but they were old and tired. They were the kind of parents who fell asleep on the couch at 8 p.m. and worried about the lawn more than anything else. Katie and I were a team. When I snuck out to go to that bonfire sophomore year, she stuffed pillows under my duvet to make it look like I was sleeping. When she failed her math final, I intercepted the report card in the mail, and we burned it in the backyard fire pit. We looked out for each other. We were stuck in the same boring suburb, going to the same boring school, dealing with the same boring people. We survived by making fun of everything. We had a running commentary on the world. If we saw someone wearing a weird hat, we would look at each other and just know what the other was thinking. We didn't even have to say it. That is why what I did makes no sense. I look back at it now and I try to find a reason. I try to find some deep, dark anger or some hidden resentment. People always want a reason. The therapists I talk to now, they always dig for some childhood trauma or some sibling rivalry. They want a story where I secretly hated her. But there's nothing. It was just a random afternoon. Katie had been talking about this guy, Alex, for months. She was obsessed. She wrote his name in her notebook. She knew his schedule. She knew what car he drove. It was honestly kind of pathetic, but in a cute way. She was 16. She had never really had a boyfriend. She had this idea of romance that she got from movies. She thought Alex was this deep, mysterious soul just because he wore a leather jacket and didn't talk much in chem lab. I knew Alex. He wasn't deep. He was a stoner kid who played COD until 4 a.m. But I didn't tell her that. I let her have the fantasy. That afternoon we were sitting in the living room. She was talking about him again, wondering if he noticed her new shoes, wondering if he liked girls with curly hair. I was bored. That is the only excuse I have. I was bored, and I was scrolling on my phone. I wish I could just talk to him, she said. But I don't have his number. The idea popped into my head fully formed. It wasn't malicious. It was just something to do. A way to interrupt the boredom. I think I have his number. I lied. I think he was in a group project with me last year. Her eyes went wide. Really? Do you still have it? Let me check, I said. I didn't have his number, obviously. I opened the App Store and downloaded WhatsApp. I set up a fake account using a burner number app. I set the profile picture to a grainy shot of a guitar I found on Google Images. Alex played guitar, or at least he carried one around. I created the account. I named it Alex. Then I looked at Katie. She was staring at me, practically vibrating with hope. Yeah, I found it, I said. Give it to me, she said. No, that's weird, I said. If you text him out of the blue, he will think you are a stalker. Let me text him. I'll tell him you are cool. I will tell him to text you. She looked at me like I was a superhero. You would do that? Yeah, I said. I got you. I typed a message into the WhatsApp account. I sent it to her real number. Hey, got your number from your brother. He said you're cool. I'm Alex. My phone buzzed in my hand as I sent it. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table a second later. She picked it up. She read the screen. Then she screamed. She literally jumped up off the couch and screamed. She hugged me. She squeezed me so hard I couldn't breathe. He texted me, she squealed. He actually texted me. I should have stopped it there. I should have said, gotcha, and laughed and taken the punch to the shoulder. It would have been a funny story. We would have laughed about it at Wendy's later. But I didn't. I just smiled. It felt good to be the one making things happen. It felt good to see her so happy, even if it was fake. That's awesome, Katie, I said. What did he say? She showed me the phone. He said you told him I was cool. Well, I said. I did. The next 24 hours were a blur of texts. I was texting her from the bathroom. I was texting her from my bed. I was texting her while sitting right next to her on the couch. It was too easy. I knew exactly what she wanted to hear. I knew she liked indie music, so Alex liked indie music. I knew she wanted someone to listen to her talk about her art class, so Alex asked tons of questions about her sketches. I was catfishing my own sister, and the sick part was, I thought I was being a good brother. I thought I was giving her a confidence boost. I told myself that when I revealed the prank, she would see that she could talk to guys, that she was interesting. By Friday afternoon, she was in deep. She was walking around with a goofy smile on her face. She was humming. He wants to meet up, she told me Friday night. She was standing in my doorway. He wants to grab a burger tomorrow. I had sent that text 5 minutes ago. That's cool, I said. Are you going to go? I don't know, she said. I'm nervous. What if I say something stupid? You won't, I said. Just be yourself. He already likes you over text, right? Yeah, she said. Yeah, he does. I set the trap. I picked the diner on Main Street, the one with the neon sign that flickered. It was public. It was safe. It was the perfect stage. I can drive you, I offered, since Mom and Dad are going to that dinner thing. You are the best, she said. She went to her room to pick out clothes. I could hear her opening and closing drawers. I lay back on my bed and opened WhatsApp. Can't wait to see you. I typed. Me neither. She replied instantly. I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. It was just so easy. Saturday came. The mood in the house was electric. Katie spent 2 hours in the bathroom. She borrowed Mom's perfume. She came into my room to show me her outfit. She was wearing this blue dress she bought with her babysitting money. It had little white flowers on it. She had curled her hair. She was wearing lip gloss. She looked older. She looked pretty. She didn't look like my annoying little sister. She looked like a young woman going on her first real date. Do I look okay? She asked. She was twisting her hands together. Is it too much? Should I change? You look great, I said, and I meant it. Alex is going to flip. I hope so, she said. She took a deep breath. Okay, let's go. We got in the car. I plugged in the phone. I put on the playlist. She was singing along to everything. She was tapping her hand on the dashboard. She was glowing. I drove to the diner. I pulled into the lot across the street. Go get him, I said. She unbuckled her seatbelt. She turned to me. Thanks, she said. Seriously, thanks for talking me up to him. No problem, I said. She got out. We walked across the street. She walked with her head held high. She looked confident. I watched her walk through the glass doors. I waited 5 minutes. I wanted her to get settled. I wanted the anticipation to build. Then I pulled out my phone. I opened the camera app. I hit record. I got out of the car. I crossed the street. I was smiling. I was rehearsing what I would say. Gotcha. Look at your face. You are so gullible. I walked into the diner. The bell above the door chimed. I saw her immediately. She was sitting on the third booth. She was facing the door. She had a menu in front of her, but she wasn't reading it. She was checking her reflection in the napkin holder. She was fixing her hair. She looked up when she heard the bell. Her face lit up when she saw me. It was pure, unfiltered joy. She thought I was there to check on her, or maybe she thought I was there to say hi to Alex. Did you see him? She asked as I walked up. Is he parking? I didn't lower the phone. I zoomed in on her face. I wanted to catch the exact moment the realization hit. He's not coming, Katie, I said. She blinked. What? Is he running late? Did he text you? I shook my head. No, he didn't text me. I held up my phone. I switched from the camera app to WhatsApp. I showed her the messages. The blue bubbles. The grainy guitar picture. It was me, I said. I'm Alex. I waited for the laugh. I waited for the punchline. I waited for her to grab a French fry and throw it at me. I waited for her to say, "You ass," and roll her eyes. But she didn't. The smile didn't turn into a frown. It didn't turn into anger. It just vanished. It fell off her face like a mask slipping. She looked at the phone screen, then she looked at me, then she looked around the diner. There were a few other people there, an old couple in the corner, a trucker at the counter. No one was looking at us. No one cared. But she looked like she was naked on a stage. She shrank, physically shrank. Her shoulders hunched up. She crossed her arms over that blue dress with the white flowers. She looked like a little kid who had been told Santa was dead. Why? She whispered. It was such a quiet question. It was just a joke, I said. The camera was still recording. Smile, it's just a prank. She tried to smile. She actually tried. Her mouth twitched. It was the most heartbreaking thing I have ever seen. She didn't say anything else. She just slid out of the booth. She walked past me. She walked out the door. I followed her. Katie, come on. Don't be dramatic. She got into the car. She stared out the window. I got in the driver's side. I was annoyed now. I felt like she was ruining the bit. I felt like she was being a bad sport. It was funny, I said as I started the car. You fell for it so hard. She didn't answer. She didn't put her seatbelt on. She just stared at the passing streetlights. I drove home in silence. The playlist was still playing, but she wasn't singing anymore. When we got home, I uploaded the video. I captioned it. She actually fell for it. I tagged a few of our friends. I wanted validation. I wanted people to tell me it was funny so I didn't have to feel the weird knot forming in my stomach. Katie went straight to her room. I heard the lock click. I went to my room. I refreshed the feed. The likes were rolling in. The comments were starting. LMAO, look at her face. That is brutal. Bro, you are evil. I felt better. See? Everyone thought it was funny. It wasn't a big deal. I knocked on her door around 10 p.m. Come on, I said through the wood. Don't be a baby. Everyone thinks it's hilarious. She didn't answer. I woke up the next morning because the house was too quiet. Usually on Saturdays, Katie was up early. She would be in the kitchen making pancakes or blasting music while she cleaned her room. But there was nothing. No sound. I looked at my phone. The video had over 1,000 views. People I didn't even know were sharing it. I got up. I went to the bathroom. The door was locked. Katie? I knocked. Hurry up. I need to pee. Nothing. Katie, seriously, open the door. Silence. A heavy, pressurized silence that made my ears pop. I got a penny from my dresser. I used it to turn the lock from the outside. The door swung open. Katie was on the floor. She was curled up around the toilet. She was still wearing the blue dress. There were empty blister packs everywhere. Tylenol, Advil, my dad's old prescription painkillers for his back. The box was torn open. The foil was punched out. I laughed at first, a short, sharp bark of a laugh. Okay, I said. You got me. Good one. Get up. I nudged her leg with my foot. She didn't move. She was heavy, stiff. I knelt down. I touched her arm. It was cold. Not cool from the tile. Cold. Deep. Radiating cold. Like touching a piece of frozen meat. I grabbed her shoulder. I tried to shake her. Her head didn't flop. Her neck was rigid. Her jaw was clamped shut. Her eyes were open, staring at the porcelain of the toilet bowl. They were cloudy. I don't remember screaming, but I must have, because my mom was suddenly there. Then my dad. My mom made a sound I didn't know a human could make. It wasn't a scream. It was a raw animal howl. She fell to her knees. She tried to pull Katie up, but the rigor mortis had set in. Katie was frozen in that curled up shape. The paramedics came. Moving her was the worst part, because she was stiff. They couldn't just put her on the stretcher. They had to maneuver her down the narrow hallway. They had to tilt her to get her through the door frame. It felt disrespectful. It felt like they were moving a mannequin, not a person. I stood at the top of the stairs and watched. I had killed my sister. I had killed her for likes. I had killed her because I was bored. The house died that day. My parents stopped speaking. They stopped eating. They moved through the rooms like ghosts, avoiding eye contact with me. They didn't blame me out loud. The police ruled it a suicide, a tragedy, an impulsive act by a teenager. But they knew, and I knew. The video was gone. I deleted it that afternoon, but it was too late. People had seen it. People knew. The funeral was 3 days later. It was an open casket. I wish it hadn't been. By then, the stiffness had passed. She looked soft. Too soft. The mortician had used too much makeup to cover the gray. Her cheeks were too pink. Her lips were a weird, waxy orange. It didn't look like Katie. It looked like a doll that someone had melted and tried to reshape. I stood by the casket and tried to cry, but I couldn't. I just felt empty. I felt like there was a hole in my chest where my heart used to be. After the funeral, the silence took over. It wasn't peaceful. It was heavy. It felt like the air in the house was made of lead. I stopped sleeping. I couldn't close my eyes without seeing her face in the diner. I missed her. I missed the car rides. I missed the playlist. I missed my teammates. I missed the only person who understood me. I started spending my nights sitting in the hallway outside her room. I couldn't go in. I couldn't look at the empty bed, so I just sat against the wall and stared at the door. That is when the sound started. It began 3 weeks after she went into the ground. I was dozing off, my head resting on my knees. Ding. My head snapped up. It was the specific, tritone chime of a WhatsApp notification. I checked my phone. It was silent. Ding. It came from inside her room. My heart began to beat like a drum. I knew her phone was in the evidence box at the police station. I knew the room was empty, but the sound was there, clear as day. I stood up. My legs were numb. I reached for the doorknob. I opened the door. Her room smelled like dust and that cloying, floral perfume she had worn that night. The bed was made. The desk was clear. Ding. The sound wasn't coming from a device. It was coming from the corner of the room, from the shadows between the wardrobe and the wall. "Katie?" I whispered. The shadow moved. It didn't look like a ghost. It didn't look like her. It looked like a smudge on a camera lens. A blur of darkness in the shape of a person. It was taller than she was. Darker than the dark around it. It didn't speak. It just waited. I should have run. I should have woken my parents, but I was so tired. I was so full of this rotting, black guilt that I just wanted something to happen. I wanted to be punished. "Are you there?" I asked. The shadow didn't answer, but a thought appeared in my head. It wasn't my voice. It sounded flat, hollow, like wind blowing through a pipe. "Undo," it whispered. "Undo." The word echoed in my skull. It wasn't audible. It was bouncing through my own mind, a thought that was not my own. I fell to my knees on her carpet. "I want to," I sobbed. "I want to undo it. I just want things back to normal." The shadow seemed to expand. It filled the room with a cold that burned my skin. It wasn't the cold of the air conditioning. It was the same cold I had felt when I touched her arm on the bathroom floor. "Normal," the hollow voice said. "We can do normal. Open the door." "How?" I asked. "Tell me how." "The door is already open," the voice droned. "You opened it when you called for her. You just have to invite her back in." I wiped my face. I looked at the shadow. It didn't have eyes, but I could feel it watching me. It felt like something. I can't even explain what it felt like, but I didn't care. "What do I do?" "Tonight," the voice said. "Unlock the back door. Call her name. Want it." "Is it that easy?" I asked. You have to want it more than you want to be safe, the voice said. I nodded. I did. I wanted it more than anything. I spent the rest of the day in a daze. I watched my parents sit at the dinner table and push peas around their plates. They looked gray. They looked like they were waiting to die. If I brought her back, I could fix this. I could fix them. Night fell. The house went dark. I waited until I heard my parents' bedroom door close. Then I went downstairs. I unlocked the back door. I turned off the porch light. I sat on the kitchen floor and waited. Wyatt, our golden retriever, came into the kitchen. He was a good dog, dumb as a bag of rocks, but loyal. He trotted over to me, his tail wagging. But then he stopped. He looked at the back door. His ears went back, his tail tucked between his legs. He started to whine, a high, pitiful sound. "It is okay, Wyatt," I whispered. "She's coming home." Wyatt didn't look at me. He backed away. He kept backing up until he hit the cabinets. Then he bolted into the living room. I heard his claws scrambling on the hardwood. I sat alone in the dark. Around 3 a.m. I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. It wasn't a hand. It sounded hard, like bone hitting wood. I scrambled up. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely grip the handle. I threw the door open. The backyard was pitch black. It was raining, a cold, steady drizzle. Katie was standing on the patio. She looked small. She was wearing a thick gray hoodie I recognized. It was my old one. She had the hood pulled up tight. She had a wool scarf wrapped around the lower half of her face. She was wearing gloves. She was shivering. Violent, jerking shivers that rattled her whole body. "Katie?" I whispered. She didn't look up immediately. She just stood there, vibrating in the rain. Then she stepped inside. She moved stiffly, like she was so cold her joints had locked up. She looked like a little girl who had been out in the storm for too long. "Katie, it's me," I said. I reached out to hug her. She felt solid. She felt real. But she was freezing. It was like hugging a snowman wrapped in cotton. She didn't hug me back. She just stood there, her arms pinned to her sides. "You're freezing," I said. I pulled back to look at her. The hood shadowed her eyes. The scarf covered her mouth and nose. All I could see was the bridge of her nose. The skin looked pale, but it was dark in the kitchen. "It's okay," I said, crying now. "You're home. I fixed it. I fixed it." She nodded. I led her to the living room. She walked with a weird limp, dragging her left leg a little, but I told myself it was just the cold. She sat on the couch, staring straight ahead. "I missed you so much," I said. I sat on the coffee table in front of her. "Mom and Dad are going to be so happy." She didn't answer. The house smelled funny, like wet dirt and something sweet, like old fruit. I figured it was just the mud on her clothes. "Say something," I pleaded. "Please?" She made a sound. It was muffled by the scarf. It sounded like a dry wheeze. "Hungry," she whispered. My heart broke. She sounded so weak. "Hungry? Okay, I'll get you something. I will make you whatever you want." I ran to the kitchen. I was manic with relief. She was here. She was talking. It worked. I pulled out ham, cheese, bread. I started making a sandwich. I was humming. I was actually humming. Then I realized something. It was quiet. Wyatt usually came running when he heard the cheese wrapper. He was obsessed with cheese. "Wyatt," I called out. "Come here, boy." Nothing. I finished the sandwich. I put it on a plate. Wyatt, I whistled. Silence. A cold feeling started in my stomach. Not the good cold of relief, the bad cold of fear. I walked into the kitchen. Wyatt? The door to the basement was cracked open. Wyatt wasn't allowed in the basement. I walked over. I pushed the door open. Wyatt, get out of there. I turned on the light. At the bottom of the stairs, there was a heap of golden fur. It wasn't moving. I walked down the stairs. My legs felt heavy. Wyatt? I got to the bottom step. It was Wyatt, but he was... Something wasn't right. He was torn open. His stomach was gone. His ribs were cracked open like a wishbone. There was blood everywhere. It was pooled on the concrete. It wasn't an accident. Something had done this. Something strong. I heard a creak on the stairs behind me. I spun around. Katie was standing at the top of the stairs. The hood was down. The scarf was gone. Her face was gray. Her jaw was hanging loose, unhinged on one side. Her mouth was stained red with blood. She was holding the sandwich I made her. She crushed it in her gloved hand and let it drop to the floor. Still hungry, she rasped. I backed up until I hit the washing machine. Katie? I choked out. She walked down the stairs. She didn't walk like a person anymore. She moved like a spider, her limbs jerking and snapping into place. She stopped at the bottom. She looked at the dead dog. Then she looked at me. Her eyes were milky white and sunken in. You did this? I whispered. She tilted her head. Her neck cracked. Empty, she said. Her voice was wet now. So empty. What are you? I screamed. Your sister, she said, but the way that she said it was wrong. It was like she was mimicking a recording. You wanted me back. Not like this, I said. I didn't want this. She took a step towards me. You owe me, she hissed. It wasn't a threat, it was a plea. She looked at me and for a second, the milky film over her eyes seemed to thin. I saw brown underneath. I saw panic. It hurts, she whined. She sounded like a little kid. It hurts so much. I'm so hungry. I'm so angry. How? I asked, trembling. What do you need? The shadow peeled itself off the basement wall. It stood next to her, tall and jagged. She needs the source, the voice droned. She is running on fumes. She needs the fuel that burned her out. Me? I asked. Katie nodded. She reached out a hand. The glove had fallen off. Her fingers were gray and withered. Please, she whispered. Let me eat. Then I will be whole. Then I will be Katie again. I looked at her. I looked at the dog. If you eat me, I said, you will kill me. Yes, she said. Exchange. A life for a life. You took mine. Give it back. She stepped closer. I could smell death on her breath. I can't be like this, she cried. It's cold. It's dark. Please, brother. Help me. She was using my guilt. She was reaching right into my chest and squeezing my heart. She knew exactly what to say. If I let you, I said, will you remember? She paused. She licked the blood off her lip. Yes. I looked at her. Really looked at her. If I let her eat me, I wasn't saving her. I was cursing her. I was forcing her to live with the memory of tearing her brother apart. I was turning her into a monster forever. just so I didn't have to feel bad anymore. No, I said. Her face twisted. The sadness vanished. The hunger snapped back into place. Give it to me, she shrieked. She lunged. She hit me hard. We fell onto the concrete floor. She was strong, unnaturally strong. Her hands pinned my shoulders. Her jaw unhinged even further. Her mouth was a cavern of red teeth. She snapped at my face. I turned my head. Her teeth clicked inches from my ear. Katie, stop! I yelled. Look at me. She drew back to strike again. I'm sorry, I screamed. I'm sorry I wasn't a better brother. She froze. She hovered over me, dripping saliva onto my shirt. She looked down at me. The hunger flickered. The brown eyes came back. She looked at where her hands were pinning me down. She looked at the dead dog in the corner. She realized what she was. She rolled off me. She scrambled into the corner away from me. She curled into a ball, hiding her face. Make it stop, she sobbed. Please make it stop. The shadow hissed. Do not listen to her. Feed her. No, I said. I stood up. I looked around. My dad's old tool bench was next to the dryer. I grabbed a long screwdriver. It was rusty, but the tip was sharp. I walked over to Katie. She looked up. She saw the screwdriver. She didn't run. She didn't fight. She uncurled her legs. She opened her arms. She exposed her chest. Do it, she wheezed. I fell to my knees in front of her. The smell of rot and dog blood was overwhelming. I love you, I said. I tried. I really tried. I whimpered out with tears rolling down my cheeks. I know, she whispered. Her voice was clear. No rasp, no hunger, just Katie. It is okay. I put the tip of the screwdriver against her chest. I pushed. It was hard. Her skin was like leather. I had to use both hands. I had to put my weight into it. She gasped. Her back arched. Her hands grabbed my arms, but she didn't push me away. She pulled me closer. Thank you, she breathed. Then she went heavy. The tension left her body. She slumped against me. The shadow screamed. It was a sound like a siren dying. Then the basement light flickered, and the room was empty. I sat there on the cold concrete, holding my sister's body, waiting for the sirens. That was 3 years ago. I spent 2 of those years in a state facility. The doctors called it a psychotic break. They said I dug her up to say goodbye. They said I killed Wyatt because I couldn't tell the difference between life and death anymore. I let them believe it. I took the pills. I nodded when they talked about processing grief. It was easier than trying to explain the shadow man in the basement. I've been out for over a year now. I live in a different state. I have a job stocking shelves at a grocery store on the night shift. It's quiet. I like the quiet. My parents don't talk to me. I don't blame them. To them, I'm just the monster who dug up their daughter. I'm writing this because I need to ask a question. I need to know if I'm the only one. That shadow? I don't know what it was. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't Katie. It was just something bad. It didn't leave because I won. I didn't win anything. It left because the show was over. It got what it wanted. It wanted to see how far I would go. But where did it go? I look at people now. I see the tired lady buying frozen dinners at 3 a.m. I see the guy sitting in his car in the parking lot, just staring at the steering wheel. Everyone has something they regret. Everyone has a moment they want to undo. I wonder if it's watching them too. I wonder if it's standing in the corner of your room right now, waiting for you to get desperate enough to open the door. if you are reading this and you have a heavy heart, if you hear a voice that sounds like your own thoughts offering you a way to fix things, don't listen. Just live with the guilt. It sucks, and it's heavy, but at least it's yours. At least it doesn't eat you. After 36 years of living in an apartment complex, I can confidently attest that a night owl is worst kind of neighbor. Being as lucky as I am, I had one of those moving into the apartment right above mine at the start of October. It was a lady who seemed to have an endless supply of worldly goods that all needed to be put into place the moment she moved in. Every single evening, at 9 p.m. exactly, she would start either hammering away, drilling the walls, or pushing furniture across her floor, always managing to reach the noise level of an angry bull in heat. I have always had quite sensitive ears. I am no stranger to being awake at night because of bothersome noises. There is always noise in the city, whether from drunkards singing at the top of their lungs or nocturnal critters running amok in the streets. Trust me, the sheer number of times I've been woken up by a possum knocking over a trash can outside my window is ridiculous. The thing is, these disturbances would always be occasional and brief. Whenever they occurred, I could easily fall back asleep afterwards. But ever since the day that lady moved in, the night has been filled with constant sounds of her mayhem. The cacophony upstairs would go on every evening for about 3 to 4 days in a row. Then, at some point, I would hear a large thudding sound, indicating that she had brought out yet another box full of stuff that needed to be set up. This routine sent me into a hellish cycle of exhaustion. I would fall asleep late and wake up exhausted in the morning. I would then have to drown myself in coffee and go to work, hoping that I could get some sleep later in the evening. Don't tell me that I just should have confronted her. I didn't want her to think that I was just some cranky old man. Besides, I don't like confronting people. I have always felt awful whenever I've had to reprimand someone. I also didn't know her name, which I felt would have made the interaction even more unbearable. I just sat on my couch, waiting for the commotion to stop. Suddenly, 3 weeks had passed, and she showed no signs of being finished unpacking. The seeds of chaos were planted as the clock struck 9 p.m. on an unusually hot evening late into October. An evening so hot that I had to have my windows open to be comfortable. The lady upstairs started toiling away, following her usual schedule. It was just as loud as all the other days. I twisted and turned in my bed, trying to cover my ears with my pillow as I had done so many nights before. But this night was different. The heat mixed with my drowsiness and the sounds from upstairs all compiled into a thundering migraine. It felt as if my brain was swelling, trying to crack my head open and run away to escape the noise. I couldn't take it any longer. I sat up in my bed, inhaled all the air that could fit into my lungs, and yelled, "Quiet!" My yelling was followed by a large thud from upstairs. She had just started unpacking another box. I thought to myself, I couldn't believe it. She had to have heard me. My yelling was so loud that they probably heard me all the way up on the 5th floor. I stared at the ceiling, awaiting the sounds of the troublemaker and her orchestra from hell. I waited, and then I waited some more. More time passed, but there were no more sounds coming from upstairs. Maybe she did hear me. Maybe she was finally being respectful. I felt my headache subside as I lay back down. I closed my eyes, letting my fatigue carry me towards slumber. I was completely unbothered for the first night in a long time. I rose with the sun several hours later, and I didn't have to chug half a liter of coffee to stay awake. I went to work with a smile on my face and a good feeling in my body. Everything was easier. I was happier. It was paradise compared to before. I came home that evening, hoping that the night before wasn't an exception. If only I had been that lucky. After the sun had gone down, there was activity in the upstairs apartment again. This time, though, the sounds were a bit different. All I could hear was bump, 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 repeating over and over again. I couldn't place the sound. It didn't come from any tool that I knew of. I was sure of that. There were irregular pauses between the sounds, ranging from about 5 seconds to 10 seconds. It wasn't just heavy footsteps, that was for sure. The spaces between them were too big. It wasn't a hammer either. The sounds were much too quiet for that. This thought process continued as I lay in my bed that night, my weary eyes fixated on the ceiling. Maybe she's tapping her foot on the floor to a song, but the sounds are not rhythmical in the slightest. Maybe she's dropping a ball repeatedly, but why would she even do that? Is she a juggler? No, that'd be ridiculous. These were but some of the thoughts rushing through my head as the sounds kept resonating in the background. It was beyond the midnight hours before I fell asleep that night. When I woke up in the morning, the noises had stopped. I assumed that she had just started working on her apartment again. Throughout the whole day, at my work and when I went home, I silently prayed that I wouldn't hear those sounds from her apartment again. Even though they were less noisy than normal, there was something about not being able to identify them that just made them much more annoying. To my dismay, however, the noises had begun anew by the rising of the moon. Bump, bump, bump. Lying in my bed that night, I was gritting my teeth out of sheer annoyance. I covered my head with my pillow again, but it was no use. I could still hear the sounds no matter how much I tried to keep them out. They made me feel as if someone was constantly poking at my brain, molding it like a piece of clay. Maybe it was revenge. Maybe, just maybe, she was mad about my yelling and was doing this to get back at me. Maybe she just wanted to drive me nuts with her antics. I tried to fall asleep, but it wasn't happening. The sounds from upstairs echoed in my head, much louder than any of the sounds that had been there in the weeks before. It was pure agony. My heart skipped a beat as my phone started ringing. I cautiously picked it up, wondering who was calling in the middle of the night. "Hello?" I mumbled. "Peterson, where are you, man? We've been waiting for you for like 45 minutes. "Oh, hello, sir. I'm sorry, but my shift doesn't start till..." I looked towards my window. The rays of sunlight had already broken through and cast light onto my floor. Sorry, sir. I'll be there in 15 minutes. I said as I got out of bed and hung up the phone. What followed was one of the worst days I've ever had in my life. I was a walking corpse, with only one thing on my mind. What were those sounds? I eventually got home and I didn't care about relaxing. Relaxation wasn't even on my mind. All I wanted to do, and all I did, was await the sounds. I sat on my couch, staring at the ceiling, and like clockwork, the commotion started back up late into the evening. Bump, bump, bump. I couldn't take it another night. It was torture. I didn't care what she thought of me anymore. I didn't care about having to scold her. I stormed out the door and up the stairs and pounded on the door. "What is your problem?" The sound stopped, but I wasn't satisfied. They were going to start again. I wasn't fooled. I turned the door handle and walked inside. Her apartment was cold like night and as silent as a library. I walked into the living room, and that's where I found her. She was lying on her back at the foot of a small stepladder. She lay beside the corner of a wooden table. The corner was covered in a mixture of dried brown blood and long black hairs. On the side of her head was a crater of blood, hair, skull fragments, and brain matter. Both of her arms were mangled to the bone. A swarm of flies was nesting on her body. The windows in the living room stood open, taking in the autumn breeze and wafting away any smell of rot that should have been. As I stood there taking it all in, I heard some skittering. I stared in disbelief as a chubby little form crept out from one of the moving crates on the floor, where it had likely been hiding from all the noise I had made. It was a possum, currently unaware of my presence. It crawled over to the body and started gnawing at her hand. Every time the possum ripped off a piece of flesh, the hand was lifted into the air before subsequently dropping to the floor, producing a light bump. I know how this sounds, but I swear I had a reason. Every once in a while, when my roommate Connor wasn't home, I'd check his room. I didn't do this to steal anything or be a snoop for the sake of it. No, I wanted to reassure myself that I wasn't living with someone who'd eventually end up on the news. Connor isn't a regular guy. He's a little too proud of his German heritage, if you know what I mean. The kind of pride that sneaks into places where it doesn't belong. Nazi jokes that land wrong. World War II facts nobody asked for. He says them casually, like he's just sharing trivia. But he always watches your face afterward, always checking for judgment. To make matters worse, he's obsessed with guns and knives. He collects them, displays them, lines them up on his wall like achievements. There's a twisted dagger mounted above his TV that he once called a real beauty, and I remember wondering why anyone would need something shaped like that unless they'd spent time imagining what it would feel like to use it. His room puts out bad vibes beyond just the murder weapons. Between morbid heavy metal posters for bands no one has heard of, and the 2 movie posters he has up, American Psycho and Joker, by the way, there were lots and lots of old war memorabilia that seems to always happen to be German. No old US Army helmets or Red Army Ushankas. He only had the stuff his favorites used. That included a World War II gas mask hanging on the wall, stiff and yellowed from prior use. He loved that thing and would wear it at night to freak me out. So yeah, I consider it my civic duty to search his room from time to time. Not because I'm nosy, because when someone surrounds themselves with weapons, Nazi iconography, and incel stuff, you start wondering if they're ever going to act out one of their special interests. I sat at his desk and logged into his computer. His password was his favorite movie plus the same numbers he used for everything. The numbers 12, 13, and 14. No idea the meaning behind those, but he uses them for everything. Usernames, gamer tags, passcodes. His overuse of them made guessing his password a lot easier, that's for sure. The browser that opened upon logging in wasn't Chrome. It was a Tor browser. Connor loved talking about the deep web or the dark web. Always said it with a grin, like he knew something about it everyone else didn't. At first, it almost felt stupid. Drugs, weapons, things so blatant they felt fake. I even laughed at one site offering hired killers like it was an online food menu. It seemed my fears of Connor were unfounded. He was just using the dark web to cosplay being a criminal. None of this was real. I was about to get off when I noticed a message pop up on Connor's computer through the open door. A chat app I didn't recognize. The sender's name was just a single letter. X. Curiosity won. It always does. The messages assumed I was Connor. X joked with him about always working during the matinees. X even mocked him for being sloppy and not using his ghost. Whatever the hell that meant. When I replied pretending to be sick and home from work, the response came almost instantly. They sent a link. They called it a red room. I knew what that was, but I told myself it wasn't real. The FBI says they aren't, so I clicked anyway. The screen went dark, then bright red, like a theater curtain pulling back. The chat exploded with emojis, popcorn, eyes, smiley faces. It was like a demented Twitch chat. Then the stream started. There was a young woman on screen tied up and terrified. The first bid was for her to get one of her fingers cut off and fed to her. I laughed at first. I actually laughed, thinking it was all BS. But then a man in a hockey mask stepped into frame with a knife not all that dissimilar to the ones Connor had hanging on his wall. The man in the hockey mask cut her finger off like it was a piece of meat at the deli. As she screamed, he shoved it down her throat and she vomited it back out. So he tried to feed it to her again, but this time she kept her mouth shut. So he grabbed her by the nose and squeezed until it started gushing blood. That got her to scream again, and after 3 of the worst minutes of my life, the man in the hockey mask got her to eat the finger. I won't repeat the other bids. I won't repeat what people were asking to be done to her, or how casually they typed it. I just remember realizing, in a cold, quiet moment, that Connor had more points saved up than I'd seen spent so far, and people were spending a lot. I muted the audio and nearly threw up. I ran to my laptop and considered calling the police, but I doubted that would be any good. They'd think I was making this up. So instead I tried reporting the site through the FBI's Cybercrimes Division. When I went back to Connor's room to grab the pertinent site information, a private message popped up. "I wouldn't do that," X said. I tried to ignore it until X added, "Ed. That's my name." I considered what to do next. How could X know it was me and not Connor? How does he even know who I am? Did Connor tell them about me? "Do what?" I replied, curiosity getting the better of me. "Report the site like you're trying to do right now. It won't work, Ed." "Why not?" I replied again, taking pictures of the conversation with my phone. "Nice try. I'm in your phone, too." X replied, not in the chat this time, but through my phone's messenger app. "You still can't stop me," I texted them back, hoping that taunting them would get them to overplay their hand. That's when X replied back with my full name, home address, credit card number, and the names and addresses of my parents and sister. X told me the site would be gone before anyone found it, that I'd sound crazy. Then they said something worse. "You don't want to be in the next show, do you?" They told me to place a bid. Not to save her, but to participate and implicate myself too. "All you gotta do is have him cut her. That's all," X explained. When I put in the bid, my hands were shaking so badly I almost missed the enter key. I didn't even look at the number afterward. I just stared at the screen, waiting for something to stop me. An error, a disconnect, anything. The chat froze. Then it exploded. Question marks, laughing faces, people typing things like, "What?" and "Is this a joke?" Someone accused me of wasting points. Someone else said it was boring. I felt this thin, stupid flicker of hope rise in my chest. Like maybe confusion was enough. Like maybe nonsense could derail this death machine. On the stream, the man in the hockey mask tilted his head. He looked genuinely curious. He set the knife down. I didn't breathe until I saw his hand come back into frame holding an electric razor. The sound was what broke me. That low, mechanical buzz cutting through the silence. The girl started crying immediately like she already knew what was coming. Like humiliation hurt almost as much as everything else. She tried to turn her head away, but she couldn't go anywhere. Hair fell into her lap in uneven clumps. The chat went quiet again. Not angry this time. Watching. I felt sick, but I also felt something worse. Relief. A coward's relief. I told myself I'd done something, that I'd changed the outcome, that this was better. Then the applause started. Clapping emojis. Fire. People calling it bold. Avant-garde. Someone typed that it was poetic. That stripping her identity was more interesting than hurting her body. I wanted to scream at them that they were all insane, that this wasn't art, that this wasn't even mercy. It was a thin attempt to appease X without it weighing too heavy on my conscience. A private message popped up. Well done. Before I could even process that, another bid appeared. Bigger than mine. Bigger than anything I'd seen all night. The man in the mask stepped back so the camera could see her clearly. Her ruined hair, her shaking shoulders, her empty, exhausted eyes. He grabbed a machete. I knew what was coming before it happened. I muted the audio, but it didn't help. Her now exposed scalp erupted red as she was cleaved to death with the machete. I think somewhere between the 5th and 6th swing, she died. At least, I hope she did. When he was done, the man in the hockey mask left the machete in her skull, much to the sick delight of the chat. The stream ended shortly after. I cried until my chest hurt. I prayed that that was the end. The horrible, sickening end. It wasn't. X messaged me again. Said I had one more task to complete to prove they could trust me. Said unlike the last one, it would be fun. When I read X's final task, I couldn't help but look up from the computer screen and towards Connor's wall. The gas mask and the knife were both staring back at me. You know what to do, X said. That night, Connor came home like nothing was wrong. Headphones on, heavy metal music blasting. He barely looked at me as I watched TV in the living room. Later, from my room, I heard him settle in. The familiar clicks of his keyboard, the same browser opening, the hum of his music still blasting in his ears. Another message arrived for him. I saw it reflected faintly off the window as I stood behind his door. Ready for the show? It was from X. I picked up the knife on the wall behind Connor as he typed his response. Always, Connor replied. When the stream loaded, Connor didn't understand. He saw on the screen his own face, confused. Then as he came to realize what was going on, afraid, very, very afraid. A message popped up. Great, because tonight you're the star. X's message caused Connor to rip out his earphones and turn around to see me standing right behind him. I was wearing the gas mask, holding his favorite knife that he loved to imply was used on Holocaust victims. I won't lie to you all. X was right. I did have fun. I am writing this from a hospital waiting room with my hands wrapped like I tried to catch barbed wire on instinct. I went camping last weekend at a state park outside my town. That is what the reservation email said. Loop C. I still have the receipt. It is smeared from rain and sweat, but I can read enough of it. State park, camping fee, 1 night, vehicle fee, total $35. A reservation ID that means nothing to anyone except me. I am not asking you to believe in the paranormal. Something mechanical happened to me out there. Something you can buy, carry in a tote, and switch on. I camp alone a lot. I do it in the boring way. I tell my sister where I am. I park nose out. I lock food up. I do not hike off trail at night. I do not drink. I do not go looking for trouble. This time, I wanted one quiet night and a morning coffee that tastes like smoke. I got there around 4:40 p.m. The ranger in the booth tore my printed slip and gave me the usual talk about quiet hours and not leaving coolers unattended. The entrance sign had a changeable letterboard under it. Fire danger was moderate. No moving firewood. Quiet hours 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The park was half full. Families in big SUVs, a couple with a rooftop tent, a group of teenagers arguing over a Bluetooth speaker that kept cutting out when they walked too far away from it. Loop C sat deeper in the pines. The road was dirt and washboarded. My spot was on the outer edge. Not the best view, but private. picnic table, fire ring, one of those steel bear boxes bolted into a slab of concrete, the kind that squeals when you open it. The first thing that felt off was the posts. There were 4 skinny fiberglass stakes around my site, about waist height, with bright orange reflective tape on the tops, like survey markers. They were spaced in a loose square that didn't match a normal campsite boundary. Each stake had a black zip tie near the top, cinched tight around nothing. I stood there longer than I want to admit, staring at them with my hands on my hips like that would solve anything. I told myself it was maintenance, hazard tree marking, utility work, something. I set up my tent, a little 2-person backpacking tent. I parked nose out. I put my cooler in the bear box. Here is the stupid human mistake I keep replaying. I did not latch the bear box the first time. I closed it. I heard the heavy door thunk. I walked away thinking it was secure. 10 minutes later, I walked back and realized the latch was still open by half an inch, the way it sits when you do not pull it down and lock it. I muttered at myself, fixed it, and moved on. Around 6:10, I walked to the restroom building to wash up. The building was painted that tired park bathroom green, and it smelled like damp concrete and lemon cleaner that never quite wins. On the way back, I passed a bigger site, where a dad was pounding stakes into the ground with the flat side of a hatchet. He nodded at me and said the bugs were insane. I agreed, even though I hadn't noticed bugs yet. He looked past me toward my site and squinted like he was trying to read something in the dark. "What are those poles?" he asked. "Already here," I said. "Probably maintenance." He made a face like he didn't love that answer, then went back to his tent. I made a small fire, not a big one, just enough to feel like I earned being outside. I ate a pouch dinner and sat on the bench with my headlamp around my neck, listening to the campground noise thin out. A baby cried somewhere down the loop. Someone laughed too loud and got shushed. A car door slammed, then it got quiet in that way campgrounds do, where you still hear people, but it comes in little distant pieces. At 9:58, my phone flipped from 5G to SOS. I remember because I looked at it before crawling into my sleeping bag. I texted my sister. "All good. Night." It failed to send. Not surprising. Lots of parks have dead spots. I fell asleep with my keys in my hand. That is another thing I normally never do. I always put them in the same pocket. This time I was half asleep and I set them on the picnic table when I tightened my tent guy lines. Then forgot to pick them back up. I did not realize that until later, when it mattered. I slept for maybe 2 hours. I woke up because my tent moved. Not a gentle flutter of wind. A hard tug, like someone grabbed the rainfly and yanked. My first thought was an animal brushing past. Then the tent moved again, lower, like pressure at ankle height. I sat up fast. My elbow hit the tent wall. My heart went straight to my throat. I listened. No footsteps, no snorting, just a faint sound outside that didn't belong. A tiny clicking, steady, like a cheap plastic pen being pressed over and over. Click, click, click. I found my headlamp and turned it on, pointing it at the tent wall. The nylon glowed. Shadows moved wrong. Thin lines crossed the fabric. Not like branches. Not like the normal wavering shapes you see when a light hits canvas. I pushed the door zipper open just enough to look out. The beam hit the orange tape on the nearest stake and flashed bright. Behind it, in the dark, something caught the light in sharp little glints. Clear line, fishing line, monofilament. Dozens of strands stretched between the stakes, some at shin height, some at waist height, some higher. A web that had not been there when I went to sleep. And it was moving, not swaying, pulling, tightening. The clicking got faster. A line snapped tight across the front of my tent door, and the nylon creased around it like it was being cinched. The tent shifted an inch, then another. I crawled out on my hands and knees because standing felt like begging to get clotheslined. The headlamp made the lines sparkle for half a second, then they vanished again unless the beam hit them at the right angle. A line caught my wrist. It did not wrap gently, it bit. Pain so clean, it felt hot. It dug into skin like a wire saw. I yanked back on instinct, and the line tightened, dragging my hand forward toward the nearest stake. My headlamp bounced. The beam flashed over the ground, and I saw where the lines were anchored. Small black boxes at the base of trees, each about the size of a brick. Each had a spool and a little metal wheel like a tiny winch. The clicking was coming from these boxes. They were pulling the line in. A second line snapped up and caught two of my fingers together. My hand cramped instantly. I felt my pulse banging against plastic and pressure. I went for my pocket knife, got it open, brought it down on the line at my wrist. It did not cut right away. The line stretched. The blade skated. Then it finally nicked through. The moment it broke, the free end snapped back and whipped my knuckles. I rolled, trying to get clear. A line tightened under my armpit. Another caught my ankle, and my foot slid toward the stake like the ground had turned slick. I started yelling, loudly, ugly. I screamed for help until my throat burned. No one came running. Either nobody heard, or nobody wanted to charge into a campsite full of invisible line. Then I heard something new, not clicking, a soft electronic chirp, like a key fob, followed by a longer tone. One of the winch boxes changed pitch. It went from click to a smooth high whine for half a second. The line on my wrist tightened again, and I understood what it was doing. This wasn't just a web. It was a net that was closing around me. I crawled toward the nearest box, cutting lines as I went. Each cut line snapped back, stinging, sometimes catching my clothes. The knife handle got slick with blood. My wrist burned in a clean groove where the line had opened it. I reached the nearest box. It was strapped to the trunk with a ratchet strap. A thick battery pack sat beside it, wired in. On top was a small antenna, like a cheap handheld radio. The line ran through a metal guide and onto a spool. I drove the knife down and cut as close to the spool as I could. The motor protested. The line went slack for a breath. Then the spool reversed and yanked the slack back. The line tightened around my calf again, harder like the system corrected itself. Something in the trees flashed to my left. A red dot, low, moving. My headlamp caught a shape behind a trunk. Someone using the trees. Keeping distance. A hand raised. I saw the rectangle of a phone or a remote. The red dot moved again and settled on my torso, steady like it was aimed on purpose. My stomach turned cold, not because of the dot, because of what it meant. This was for me. I grabbed the battery cable and ripped it out of the box. The clicking stopped. The line around my leg went slack so suddenly I almost fell backward. For half a second it was quiet, except for my breathing and the soft snap of the fire dying down in the ring. Then another clicking started farther away. Another box. Back up. The lines began tightening again, slower but still tightening. The person in the trees shifted, leaves crushed under a careful step. I did not wait. I crawled out of the tightening tent, cutting and dragging, getting snagged, freeing myself in inches. My shorts tore. My skin caught line and I felt it burn new grooves across my thigh and forearm. My headlamp bounced, turning the trees into quick flashes. I got to my car and reached for my keys. Nothing. My pocket was empty. My brain did this blank, stupid pause, like it tried to deny reality for a second. Then it hit me. Picnic table. The clicking sped up again. The net tightened again. I could feel it starting to catch my waist. I turned my headlamp toward the picnic table and saw them glinting there like a cruel joke. Right where I left them. I crawled to the table, grabbed them, and my wrist screamed when the line shifted against the cut. I got back to the car, hit on lock, and yanked the door open. A line snapped tight across my waist as I tried to get in. It caught on my belt and pulled me back hard enough that my head clipped the door frame. I screamed and cut at it. The knife finally sliced through. The tension snapped back into the trees. I fell into the seat, slammed the door, and locked it. Lines slapped the outside of the car. I heard them ping against the metal like cables flicking a drum. In my headlamp beam, I saw the stakes again, and my stomach dropped even more. There were more than 4 extra stakes beyond the campsite boundary, closer to the road, hidden in brush. The web reached toward the road like it expected me to run. I started the car and threw it into reverse. The tires spun on dirt. The car lurched and I felt a jolt. Then I hit something soft but strong. The hood dipped. The line stretched. For a second I thought the car would be held in place. Then the line snapped. The sound was sharp, multiplied, whip cracks. The hood shook. Something slapped the windshield and left a wet streak. I reversed hard and swung forward, aiming for the main road out of the loop. In my mirror, between trunks, I saw the person move. A silhouette, closer now. Reflective tape on their sleeves, orange like the stakes. They stepped toward my car and raised a hand. Not waving, pointing. My headlights swept the ground, and for a second I saw what they'd been standing near. A plastic tote half buried in needles. Lid cracked open, full of coiled clear line and more black boxes. Supplies. I hit the gas. On the way out, I laid on the horn until it sounded wrong. I wanted lights to come on. I wanted witnesses. Some did. Porch lights snapped on. A man stepped onto the road in socks, hands up like he did not know whether to stop me or ask what was wrong. I did not stop. I drove straight to the entrance booth. It was closed, dark, but there was an empty phone box by the gate. A small sign above it said to lift the receiver for emergencies and not to use it for reservations. My hands shook so badly I dropped the receiver once. I told the dispatcher someone had set wire traps in my campsite, and there were motors pulling them tight. I kept saying wire because fishing line sounded too stupid for what it had done. A sheriff's deputy arrived first, then a ranger in a separate vehicle. They took one look at my wrists and legs and told me to sit. They drove back to Loop C with lights on. I didn't go with them. I couldn't make myself. I sat under a buzzing light and watched moths slam into the plastic cover while my blood dripped onto the concrete. I remember thinking very clearly that the drip was too slow to be real, like my brain was watching it in someone else's body. When the ranger came back, his face looked different, like he'd aged 10 years on the drive. He did not tell me it was nothing. He did not tell me I imagined it. He said, "We found it." They found the stakes. They found the lines. They found multiple winch boxes, still strapped to trees, still working, still pulling the line, even after I'd ripped one battery loose. They found the tote. They did not find the person. At the hospital, they irrigated the cuts. They picked clear fragments out of my skin with tweezers. They gave me a tetanus shot. The doctor asked if I'd been attacked. I told him yes. He asked by what. I told him, a system. 2 days later I drove past that state park on my way to work just to prove to myself it existed. The sign is still there. The entrance still looks friendly. the little tourist board still advertises it like a peaceful place to unwind. Loop C is closed now. There is now signage zip-tied to the permanent posts. Bright yellow, temporary. It says the area is closed due to utility work and not to enter Loop C. If I ever camp again and see skinny fiberglass stakes with reflective tape that do not make sense or zip ties around nothing, I won't assume it is maintenance. I won't sleep in that site. I won't step between those posts. And if I hear clicking in the dark that doesn't sound like an animal, I'm leaving. I'm doing it before the lines start moving. Because once they start pulling, you stop being a camper. You become a problem somebody planned to solve. My grandfather died in our house on a winter night, and something came for him before the body was cold. We were all there when it happened. My wife, Margaret, my mother, my aunts and cousins. My grandmother sat beside him on the small cot, her hands folded in her lap, as if waiting for instructions. She had always done that. Waited. Even when he was angry. Especially then. He had been a large man once. Broad, loud, impossible to disobey. In our house, his word was scripture. He had forbidden doctors, medicine, even prayers not spoken the proper way. When his breathing turned shallow and wet, no one argued. We were raised not to. The room changed long before he stopped breathing. Heavy, as if the walls were leaning in to listen. The fire burned hot, snapping and hissing. Outside, the fields were dark and pressed close to the windows. The house creaked and shifted with the wind, settling around us like a living thing. My grandmother never looked up. When he spoke his last words, they weren't blessings. They weren't apologies. He called her guilty. The clock struck once after that, though no hour was due. I remember it because it made my skin crawl. The sound lingered too long, like it didn't want to fade. My grandmother finally broke the silence. "He drove me to it," she said, her voice low and cracked. "Would he have spared an old woman? You know he wouldn't have. You've all seen what he did when anger took him. I stood between him and you every time." No one answered her. We didn't need to. We knew what she meant. We had known for years. He had fallen down the stairs earlier that evening. Hard. The sound of bone on wood still rang in my ears, and my grandmother stood at the top of the stairs, her hand over her mouth, staring down at him with a look of horror I will never forget. Margaret gripped my arm. "Edward," she whispered, barely moving her lips. "Is something wrong with the clock?" I looked at it and felt a chill crawl up my spine. The glass reflected my face, pale, like I wasn't fully there. "I think we should step outside," I told her. "Just for air." My grandmother shook her head when I asked her to come with us. "Not yet," she said. "Let me sit with him a little longer." Margaret and I stepped out onto the porch. The cold slapped at us. Our breath came out in white clouds, and she clung to me as if she might float away. "Promise me something," she said. "Promise you won't become like him." "I won't," I told her, and I meant it. I swear. When we went back inside, the fire surged as if fed fresh wood, though no one had touched it. The room had gone quiet. Even the sobbing stopped. That was when I heard the sound. At first, it was distant, like an animal crying across the fields. Then it sharpened, stretched, became something else entirely, a scream that didn't belong to the living. It passed through the walls, through the fire, through us. My grandmother gasped and collapsed against the cot. My grandfather lay still beneath the blanket, his face finally peaceful. Then the footsteps began. They weren't footsteps exactly. It sounded as if the house itself were shifting, like weight pressing down from above. The air grew so cold it pinned us in place. I leaned down and whispered into Margaret's hair, "Whatever happens, don't look." She nodded, burying her face against my chest. The fire dimmed and something entered the room. I didn't see it. I swear I didn't. But I heard it breathe, a deep, hollow sound. Air dragged through broken reeds. Pain flared behind my eyes. My teeth ached. My bones felt too tight inside my skin. Then it spoke. The voice came from everywhere at once. "Who among you has been named?" No one answered. "Who has stolen from me?" My grandmother wailed. "I did," she cried. "Please, I stole from you." There was a long pause. The pressure in the room became unbearable. "You are the accused?" "Yes," she sobbed. The wind roared through the house, and the world dropped away beneath my feet. I held Margaret as tightly as I could, pressing her face into me so she couldn't lift her head. "Then look upon me," the voice said. We didn't look. When the fire flared back to life, the room erupted in screams. My grandfather lay exactly as before, but my grandmother was gone. Not dead. Gone. Her chair stood empty, no body, no mark on the floor, nothing to show she had ever been there at all. Later, when the house was quiet again, I opened Margaret's hand. Inside her palm lay the small black stone my grandfather had given me years ago. He used to say it protected him once, long ago, though he never explained how. I don't know if it saved us. I only know that my grandmother answered when something asked a question, and we didn't. And sometimes, late at night, when the house is very still, I close my eyes and remember that emptiness, the feeling of being nowhere at all, and I wonder if it remembers where I live.
As I write this, I'm nursing a glass of whiskey on my back porch. I don't know how to describe what I'm feeling right now. It's been 11 years since he disappeared. That kid has been my whole world since the day he was born. His mother hasn't been in his life since he was a baby. It's a long and frankly traumatic story, so I won't tell it here. But to condense it, she's an addict, and only God knows where. So, I've been Ozzy's legal guardian since he was 2. October 31st, 2014. Ozzy told me he was going out with his friends for the night. I remember it so vividly. His face, with brown freckles like his mother. The mole on his neck that I have too. I've played that day in my mind 1,000 times. Every detail in Technicolor again and again, just to have something to hold on to. His mop of curly dark hair, the red hockey jersey he was wearing, his jeans, his mother's ring he wore on a chain around his neck. All of it. I didn't know at the time, but him and his friends had actually planned to explore, party, and spend the night in the old abandoned house a few kilometers from town. That house always gave me the creeps. Even after years of being a sheriff and having my fair share of unexplained experiences, it just makes my skin crawl. Even more so now, after all this. That house has a sordid history. In the 30s, the man who owned it threw a dinner party/family gathering. He then proceeded to chain the doors shut from the outside, climb back in through a window, and slaughter everyone inside. People have told stories about it being haunted since I was a child back in the 70s. It's become a local legend. People took to calling it the Red Finch Manor. And it's been a long-standing dare among teens to stay in there overnight. Most don't make it past midnight before they call it quits and hoof it back up the old road back to town. I can't even tell you how many times I've had to drive tipsy teenagers back home in the black and white off that road at absolutely ungodly hours. Ozzy grabbed his stuff and left around 7 p.m. I wished I had listened to the pit in my guts and grabbed him by the arm and told him no. I was the one to report him missing around 4 a.m. when he hadn't come home. I didn't sleep that night despite having work at 6 in the morning. Maybe it was intuition, maybe it was God warning me, or whatever it is in that house calling out to me, that it had taken my little boy. I was sitting on my couch, my phone in my lap with my thumb hovering over the button. I didn't call 911, I called my boss, Frank. He would have gotten there faster anyways. The line rung a few times before his groggy voice answered. Jesus, Joey. This better be good. It's 4 a.m. I felt sick. Like at a moment's notice, I was going to hurl onto the hardwood floors of my living room. Frank, get over here, please. It's an emergency. Ozzy. Frank, the kid's gone. I said, my voice shaking more than I had ever heard it. It felt like my entire world was already crashing down, even though a logical person would have been able to rationalize, come up with explanations. But for some reason I just knew. I knew. Frank didn't say much else, and he was in my kitchen with me in less than 5 minutes. I vaguely remember crying. At that time I hadn't cried in probably years, at least not like that. I was in hysterics, pacing in my kitchen insisting that something terrible happened. We searched for hours, trekking through the woods, knocking on doors, looking everywhere. Something pulled me to that god-forsaken house. Some otherworldly tether drew me there that night. Myself, a few deputies, Frank, and over a dozen volunteers walked the 2 or so clicks down the dirt road. The sky was turning from the dark black of night to a deep blue as daybreak approached. The manor came into view, and I had this horrible, soul-crushing dread. 19 people swept that house with flashlights, and we didn't find a trace of the kids who went missing that night. Those 5 kids got headstones a few years back. For 3 years I practically drowned myself in whiskey. I lost myself in grief. I had constant nightmares, dreams about all the horrible possibilities of what could have happened to my nephew. I'm better now, but I can't say I had healed. Ozzy was my only family at the time, though I've since gotten married. His grandfather and grandmother passed in 1991 and 2008, respectively. My sister has been way off the deep end and not in speaking terms with me since 2000 when I took custody of Ozzy. Fast forward to a week ago, December 7th, 2025. I'm still working as a sheriff, and admittedly still mourning on some level. I hadn't thought I'd ever fully get past losing him. I was on duty, sitting in my patrol car eating cheap fried fast food when my radio crackled to life. 1032, this is Deputy Ross. I need another unit at 762 Country Road 144, and call forensics. The abandoned house. That same abandoned house that the less rational part of my brain insisted had stolen Ozzy. I pressed the button and spoke. 10-4, this is Sheriff McKinney. ETA 3 minutes. I flicked on my lights and sirens and peeled out of the parking lot like a bat out of hell. They say death has a smell, something specific that can't be replicated, and I can assure you that's very true. Like rotting meat sprayed with a sickly sweet perfume. It was faint, but I could smell it despite the fact the freezing cold had practically frozen the body lying in the snow solid. I didn't need to look long to know the body belonged to one of those missing kids. I'll say it again, we found a body. A dead body, not bones. After 11 years. A body. How the hell wasn't this kid just scattered bones we would dig up after the spring thaw? And what the hell happened to him? Because he was cut up pretty bad. I'll save you the gory details, but it was bad. Really bad. Coroner said he'd been dead less a few days. December 2nd, she told me. Stabbed to death. Poor kid bled out right there in the snowbank. That's crazy enough, finding someone freshly dead after over a decade. But the part that left us with even more questions was, why the hell did he still look 17? He should have been 28, so why did he still look the exact same as the missing persons poster we plastered all over the city a few clicks away? Christ, he looked exactly like he did in the senior photos I helped his mom take. This was messed up. Did some sick guy preserve him, keep him alive for 11 years, and he just aged insanely well? What was this? I didn't sleep that night either. My wife Winona sat up with me. I had too many questions to relax long enough to sleep. I was jittery, on edge. December 14th, 2025. Tonight Winona was at her sister's house and I was alone. The place feels empty without her. Almost eerie, like some strange isolationist dream where I was the only man left alive. Then something changed. I felt that same feeling I did the night Ozzy disappeared, except in reverse. I can't describe it any other way. It was like I had this sudden lump in my throat and I don't know, whatever the opposite of dread is. Like when you remember something you'd forgotten years ago, and the memory comes rushing back and suddenly everything makes sense and everything is right again. Don't get me wrong. It still freaked me out. But I suppose the Lord wasn't done with me because I thought I was having a stroke when I heard something I hadn't heard in over 10 years echo from my backyard. Hello, Uncle Joey? I didn't even think. Not a single thought went through my head as I jumped off my couch, across my kitchen, and crashed out my back door still in my gym shorts and tank top despite the freezing temperature. There in the foot-deep snow was my boy. There was Ozzy, still in the same clothes, slowly cutting through the shining powder snow. It felt like time stopped. His jersey was ripped. He was covered in blood, and I'm still not sure how much of it was his. The lab hasn't called me back yet. Had I died in my sleep? Was this some kind of afterlife? It took a minute for my brain to turn back on and actually process what the hell I was seeing. Kiddo? I called out, my voice uneasy. I cut myself off, bounding off my back porch and into the snow. Who knows how long he's been out in the cold? It's December in northern Ontario, for fuck's sake. It was near 30 below. It didn't matter how the hell he was alive. All that mattered was that he didn't freeze to death. When I managed to haul Ozzy inside, he just cried. I held him in my lap on my kitchen floor like he was a toddler again, until Frank and an ambulance got here. My mind was elsewhere. What the hell was I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do now? That I'm in the middle of all this. The rest was kind of a blur. Frank called forensics again to look at the house. Test the blood on Ozzy's clothes. I don't really remember much up until I got home about 2 hours ago. It's 4 a.m., and I'm bundled in about 5 layers drinking a glass of the strongest whiskey I had in the house. He's still 17. Ozzy didn't have much to say other than frantically asking about his friends and the house. About a man. A specific man. Remember how I mentioned the house's history? The massacre in the 30s? Yeah, I don't really know what to make of it either. All I know is that, according to Ozzy, whatever the hell is in that house bleeds. And if it bleeds, I can kill it. I've got a 12 gauge in my lap right now. It's taking every ounce of restraint in me to not march over there with as many slugs as money can buy, and as much gasoline as I can carry to burn the place in holy fire. If I do, I'll let you know if I can wipe that godforsaken place off the face of the planet. If not just for Ozzy. If at least for the other 3 kids whose bodies we haven't found yet. This is me signing off. I need to put down the whiskey and go get some sleep before I do something stupid.
Every neighborhood has a place children are warned to never cross. A tunnel, a fence, a creek, sometimes just a street or an abandoned house. A line drawn in fear, and if you dare step past it, something bad will take you. In my town, the Forbidden Zone was a decommissioned storm drain at the edge of town. The story went that something lived inside it, something that might once have been a man. It would come out at night and prowl the nearby streets, searching for children. Once it found one, it would shove the child into a large burlap sack and drag it back into the bowels of the drain, where it would devour them whole, leaving barely anything behind. Sometimes a shoe, sometimes a tooth. Others, just a fingernail. As children, we believed every word of it. It became a common dare to see who was brave enough to approach the drain, or even step inside it. And truth be told, the kids who took that challenge too far tended to go missing. Everyone said they'd fallen victim to the bag man. Things got so bad that a curfew was issued, parents panicked, and eventually the drain was sealed off. After that, the disappearances stopped, and life returned to normal. Children were safe again. Of course, as adults, we told ourselves the truth was simpler and far less supernatural. Storm drains are dangerous places. Dark, slick, confusing mazes where a child could fall, get lost, drown, or break a neck without needing any monster at all. That was what I believed. That was what I told myself for years. Until I finally went in myself. It had been a long time since I'd come back home. Years since I'd even thought about the drain. I was standing on my parents' porch one evening, watching the sun sink behind the hills, when I noticed a faint glimmer in the distance, too far away to make out clearly, but I knew exactly where it was coming from. The drain. I stood there longer than I meant to, staring at that distant flicker of reflected light, chuckling to myself as I remembered the stories. That was when the worst idea I'd ever had crossed my mind. "Hey Hunter, want to do something cool?" I called into the house. A few seconds later, a smiling face appeared at the doorway. "What are we doing, Uncle Micah?" he asked, adjusting the Lakers cap perched on his head. "We're going on an adventure," I said, and his face lit up immediately. "But don't tell your mom. It's a secret." He nodded eagerly as I handed him my pinky, sealing the pact like it was sacred. I ran to the garage and rummaged around until I found 2 flashlights, a bolt cutter, and an old hard hat. I gave the helmet to Hunter, and he proudly set it over his cap like it was armor. At the time, I told myself this was about bonding, about making memories. I'd missed most of his childhood because of work, and despite being older than my sister, life hadn't blessed me with children of my own. It was a stupid decision. I know that now. We headed down the street toward the drain as dusk bled into night. The last of the daylight vanished behind the hills, leaving the area bathed in the sickly yellow glow of aging street lamps. Hunter skipped beside me, already flicking his flashlight over every crack in the pavement, narrating his discoveries with excitement. I smiled, even as something tight coiled in my stomach. The drain was blocked by a large wooden fence, mostly rotted through with age. I told Hunter to step back while I pried away a panel wide enough for us to slip through. As soon as we did, the stench hit us. Stale water, rust, and something sour beneath it. "Pew!" Hunter exclaimed. And I laughed, though the smell clung to the back of my throat. Beyond that was a second barrier, a rusted metal fence bolted directly over the mouth of the drain. Attached to it was a warning sign that had once been bright yellow. though now only a corner of paint remained. The word danger was still embossed in the metal, visible when my flashlight passed over it. I should have listened. While Hunter played with his light, I used the bolt cutter to carve out an opening. The metal groaned and snapped louder than I liked. Each sound echoed down the darkness. Eventually, we squeezed through. The moment I stepped inside, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. A strange buzzing filled my chest, like static just under my skin, and adrenaline flushed through me without reason. "What is this place?" Hunter asked, his voice smaller now as he moved deeper into the tunnel. "It's just an old drainage pipe," I said, trying to sound casual. "Pretty neat, right?" He didn't answer right away. Our footsteps echoed unnaturally, overlapping and stretching until it sounded like someone else was walking with us. "I don't know," he finally said, his voice wavering. "It's fine," I replied, resting a hand on his shoulder. He yelped in surprise, dropping his flashlight. It clattered on the ground and went dark. The sudden loss of light made the darkness feel thick, almost wet, as if it had weight to it, pressing against my eyes and skin. For a heartbeat, I couldn't move, my brain lagging behind the instinct to panic. I dropped to one knee, fumbling blindly, my fingers brushing cold concrete before closing around the flashlight. I smacked it once against my palm, then again, harder this time, the hollow sound echoing down the tunnel. Nothing. A third smack finally coaxed it back to life, the beam sputtering weakly before stabilizing. As the light returned, something deep within the tunnel shifted. It wasn't loud, it wasn't even clear, just a subtle displacement, like water disturbed far away, but it was enough to make my stomach clench. My mouth went dry, the taste of metal and ash coating my tongue, and I realized I'd stopped breathing. I forced air back into my lungs slowly, carefully, as if any sudden movement might draw attention. "Maybe that's enough adventure for today," I said, my voice higher than I meant it to be as I handed the flashlight back to Hunter. He didn't argue, he didn't joke. He just nodded, tight and quick, gripping the light with both hands like it was a lifeline. For a few seconds there was nothing but the drip of water and the echo of our breathing. I started to convince myself it had been nothing, that fear had filled in the gaps where reason should have been. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Not a scuffle, not a scrape. Measured, deliberate steps echoing from deep within the tunnel, each one landing with enough weight to carry through the concrete. They came slow at first, spaced far apart, like whatever was walking didn't need to hurry. Every nerve in my body screamed at once. "Run outside now," I shouted. Hunter didn't hesitate. His footsteps pounded away from me, frantic and uneven, shrinking rapidly as he fled toward the opening. I swung the flashlight back into the darkness, the beam jittering as my hands shook. "Who's there?" I called, my voice cracking despite my effort to steady it. The light swept across bare walls, pooled water, rust-stained concrete. Nothing moved. No shape, no sound beyond the distant drip and the fading echo of my nephew's escape. I let out a shaky laugh, forcing air through clenched teeth. "You're being stupid," I muttered. "It's just a rat, or pipes settling." I turned to call Hunter back, already rehearsing how I'd laugh this off later, when something landed beside me with a wet, meaty splash, like a heavy sack dropped into a shallow puddle. The sound was too close. I turned. The beam caught a face inches from mine, skin stretched gray and slick over bone, eyes sunken and bloodshot, reflecting the light like those of an animal caught in headlights. Its mouth split into a grin far too wide, teeth blackened and broken, the stink of rot rolling off of it in waves. I tried to scream, but a hand closed around my throat before sound could escape, fingers digging in with impossible strength. The world tilted as it shoved me back. my spine slamming into the damp wall hard enough to rattle my teeth. Air vanished from my lungs as the grip tightened. From the corner of my eye, I saw the burlap sack resting against the tunnel floor. The bottom of it was soaked dark, stiff with old stains that glistened wetly in the flashlight's glow. I thrashed uselessly, my hands clawing at its wrist, my boots scraping against the concrete for purchase. It leaned closer, close enough that I could see the cracks in its skin. The filth caked into every fold. The smell was overwhelming. Decay, stagnant water, something sweet and sickly beneath it all. It sniffed me once, then again, slow and deliberate, before dragging its tongue across my cheek. The touch was cold and slick. I gagged. Too ripe, it gurgled, its voice bubbling like water forced through mud. The pressure vanished as suddenly as it had come. I hit the ground hard, air crashing back into my lungs in a painful rush. I didn't look back. I didn't think. I ran. I burst through the fence, grabbed Hunter, and didn't stop until we were back at my parents' house. My clothes clung to me, soaked through with sweat, my chest burning with every breath. Hunter sobbed into my shoulder, his small body shaking. My sister came running out, snatching him from my arms, her face twisted with fear and fury. She never asked what happened. Hunter never understood what he'd almost been a part of, and I kept my mouth shut, clinging to the hope that silence might seal the nightmare away. It didn't. The next day, Hunter was gone. His cap was found near the old drain. After that, the disappearances started again.